Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. In today's video, I'm going to be addressing my fellow Christian parents who are contemplating where they want to put their children to school. So I'm going to give you some things that I really think you need to think about first. A lot of times parents, whether they are Christian or not, will default to the public school method of education just because it's something that a lot of people have grown up with. And then the second most popular would be the private school. And that's something that is entirely up to each individual. And a lot of people don't actually think about the homeschooling aspect of it, which of course is something that I think that more parents should do than are. But really, there are some things that I think that some parents may not have given enough thought to before putting their kids in public school, and in some cases, even some private schools. So I just wanted to give you some food for thought. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is, are you willing to let your child be discipled by a stranger? The Bible tells us that no man is above his teacher. And the fact is, you don't know what sort of teacher your child is going to have. And make no mistake about it, your child will be the disciple of their teacher. They will be with their teacher all day long, 5 days a week for 36 weeks out of the year. And sometimes you may be blessed with a teacher who has similar worldviews, who may also be believers. I was actually blessed enough for that when my kids were in school many years ago. My kids' first and second grade teachers were believers. And actually, they're both retired now, and they have been warning other people not to get into the teaching career. So that's really something to think about. But I really have to say that sometimes you will likely, especially in this day and age, seeing what's coming out of the colleges, you will likely get a teacher who is completely the opposite of everything that you believe in. And you have to ask yourself, are you willing to have your child be a captive audience of someone like that all day long? And now a lot of times people will look at public schools and think that it's just a problem there. It is not just a problem in public schools. Unfortunately, it is a problem sometimes in private schools now also. Obviously, not as much, but yeah, you never know what kind of teacher your child is going to have. You never know what sort of things your kids are going to be learning unless you are the one teaching it to them. And I've seen story after story of teachers in Christian schools who are kind of bragging, maybe on social media, about how they are exposing their Christian students to things that their parents wouldn't want them to. And in fact, if you've ever seen Vodi Baucham's wonderful sermon, Children of Caesar, I will link that in the description box. He actually shared a study which was it was based on a survey that was taken by parents of Christian schools, and unfortunately a very large percentage of teachers at Christian schools do not have biblical worldviews. And I think that a lot of times parents automatically assume that all the teachers there will follow their beliefs, but that just isn't the case. So the second thing that I want you to really think about is that quantity really does matter. I know that a lot of parents say that they can counteract what their kids are learning in school all day by teaching them the truth at home and by doing devotions with them and reading the Bible with them and taking them to church. And of course, these are all wonderful things to do with your kids. But the fact remains that your child will still be getting at least 30 to 40 hours a week of, at the very least, secular humanist, and unfortunately, what is leaning more towards a Marxist education while they are in school. So I saw a meme recently that basically said that you think that you can counteract what your kids are learning in school by taking them to Sunday school and they're coloring, a picture of Noah's Ark every Sunday, when in fact they're in school all day long, being just completely inundated with all of these informational tidbits that are likely against your beliefs. And it's something that you really need to think about. You may have the best of intentions of counteracting what your kids are learning, but you have to look at the time element of it as well. So the next thing is, I know socialization is going to pop up. It's something that pops up for everyone, and that really, the history of socialization would be for another video entirely, because socialization, the whole theory of that, is a relatively new concept. It was put in place kind of to defend the age-segregated classrooms. Before compulsory schooling, no one really cared about this thing called socialization. But, you know, a lot of people are afraid that their kids are not going to have friends. Or on the other hand, they want their children to go to school to be a light for the other children there who may not know Jesus. And again, that is a very worthy cause. But I also want you to remember that the Bible tells us that bad company corrupts good morals. Your child may be the only child at school who shares these beliefs. And I know that as parents, we would love to think that our kids are going to shine through for everyone. And sometimes that happens. I'm not going to deny it. Sometimes that happens. But I believe that Vodi Bakum also went over this in a study in that sermon as well. And unfortunately, that's not usually the case. If you think about, and now I'm going to this is an author, Israel Wayne, in his book, Education, Does God Have an Opinion? He gives an analogy of, I don't remember if he used potatoes or apples, but I'll say potatoes. And, you know, if you have a bag full of bad potatoes and you put one good potato in that bag of bad potatoes, what's going to happen? Is that good potato going to turn the others bad? Or is the bad going to make that good potato go bad also? And that's really what you need to think about. We need to look at God's word, and we need to remember what it says, that yes, bad company corrupts good morals. And we need to take that to heart when making the decision for where we're going to send our kids to school every day when they are not under your observation. So I'm like losing my place. Fourth is, do you know what your district is teaching? This is a really important question. There are a lot of districts out there that are teaching really questionable things. All you need to do is turn on the news or read an article somewhere, and you will see that there are outraged parents when they are finding out the things that their kids are being taught. Sometimes there are teachers who are trying to hide what they're teaching their students. This is a real problem. Now, yeah, there are some schools that seem, at least from parents that I hear, they haven't started doing any of this stuff yet. But I really do want to caution you that a lot of times some schools will keep this under lock and key, and you as the parent simply won't know about it. And that is what's happening. A lot of parents are finding out after the fact, and that's why they're so furious. But you need to ask yourself that again. Do you know what your district is teaching? And a lot of times, even if it's something as innocuous as the follow your heart philosophy, that's something that you hear going on with a lot of teachers. SEL, social emotional learning, is huge in the education field right now. And I really think it's something that we need to be cautious about. I think that schools really do need to stick to academics, and they are using social emotional learning to bring in things that really don't belong in schools. But yeah, one of the aspects of the SEL is follow your heart. But what does the Bible tell us? It tells us the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand it? So again, your children will be learning things that are completely contrary to what the Bible tells us. And then in addition to that, this is kind of like an add-on to that. Even if your school is not teaching any of that kind of questionable stuff right now, are you prepared for what's to come? Because right now, thankfully, we're seeing a lot of victories with parents who are they're winning. There was one school district that they kind of kicked out their school board and voted in a new one, and they voted for the students to not wear masks anymore. So we do see a lot of these victories happening right now. But here's the thing: this whole narrative, this whole agenda that the schools have going on right now, it has been in place for years. It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They have been wanting to put this sort of information in schools for a very long time. And yes, pushback from parents holds them off. So it might take a little bit longer, but I guarantee you that if they want something in the schools, it is eventually going to be there. Make no mistake about it, because I want you to remember, if you see my other videos, you already know this. The school system was never put in place to educate. It was put in place to indoctrinate and to create obedient citizens, to create unthinking citizens who would just not question anything. And so unfortunately, I just talked about this in yesterday's video. We see that's happening a lot. So even though it might on the surface look like the school system cares about what the parents want, I would say that those in the upper echelon, now not always like on the teacher level and everything, because they a lot of times don't have much control over anything. But if you're looking on the upper echelons of the school system, especially like the Department of Education, which is an unconstitutional office, if you ask me, but they're the ones that you need to worry about, because they don't care what parents care about. They don't care. And so the last thing that I want you to just keep in mind is that I've been talking about social emotional learning and how schools are incorporating it. That's all you see nowadays is SEL. It's like they've completely forgotten how to teach reading, writing, and math, and they're just concerned about SEL. And again, that's for an agenda. But they are using this SEL to incorporate New Age religion into the classroom as well. There are a lot of curriculums out there who are teaching educators how to do yoga in the classroom, how to do deep breathing meditation techniques. It is about teaching mindfulness. And I know that a lot of Christian parents, or a lot of Christians in general, don't realize this, but yoga is not just an exercise method. It's not just breathing techniques. It's based on Eastern mysticism. They are bringing the New Age religion into the classroom. And this is something that should not be happening at all because of the Establishment Clause. Now, I know that some parents have told me that they opted their kids out of that part of their class. And hopefully that is an option that everyone has. But these are things that you really do need to think about. If you haven't ever looked into the reality of yoga and meditation and mindfulness and all that, I strongly recommend. There's a book by Josh Peck and Stephen Bankars, and it's called The Second Coming of the New Age. And they both used to be very, very big into the New Age movement, and they are now Christians. And they wrote this phenomenal book. I'll leave a link in the description box to it, and it is definitely worth your time. So again, I bring this to your attention because I am a parent who used to have my kids in public school. I have seen a lot of this stuff firsthand. Thankfully, the crazy stuff was not in the schools, at least that I know of. Again, you never know, when my kids were there. And they certainly weren't doing yoga in their classroom, and they weren't doing SEL, because we've been homeschooling for a pretty long time now. So that wasn't something that I ever had to deal with, but I have seen a lot of other things that I don't think that a lot of parents think about. And let's go back to the socialization thing one more time. I know that you think that it's important for your kids to be around other kids. And, kids do like to have friends. But I don't know if you remember when you were a child, you were likely told to resist peer pressure, to not let other kids influence you. And yet what I'm seeing is I am seeing more and more is people saying that children need to be influenced by other children so that they know how to act properly. And that is insane. That is like the blind leading the blind. You don't need another child to teach your child in the way that they should go. God instructed you as the parent to do that. And I really encourage you to think really hard about that and pray really hard about that. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.